Welcome to the Voyager podcast, hosted by Chris Fick and Brad Alexander, a show about authentic faith in unlikely places. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We hope you're encouraged.
Welcome back to a special and fun episode of the Voyager podcast. My name is Chris Fick, and I'm here with my good friend, Brad. I was like, are you going to say your name or no, Brad Alexander?
It's been a little while.
It has been a little while. You're right. But we decided to do an episode on kind of all the stuff going on in your life, Brad. It was my idea, not yours, but I was like, I feel like it'd be really cool to talk about Wise Old Crow, the Threshing Floor, Tell Me About Tomorrow, and the other things you have coming up, but kind of like talk through God's faithfulness through all of this, some of the process, as well as like talking about the Threshing Floor is about to come out. And
yes, it is.
Even action points where people can like find out about it, be part of it, watch it, even have it at churches, stuff like that, have like an opportunity to kind of promote it and show some clips and stuff. So that was kind of the idea, knock the dust off the microphones and get back into it.
Yeah. I have a film called The Threshing Floor that is coming out September 9th. You've really seen a lot of the process of this, and we have press coming out and we have a publicist, and there's been some interviews lately and there's some podcasts coming up, and a lot of it is grounded in the secular space. So, you know, they're going to ask and have been asking questions about addiction. And the cool thing is that they've never shied away from it being a faith-based film. But I'm never going to get to tell the story there of God's like faithfulness and provision in the process. And we thought with the Voyager audience, it's a cool place to be able to talk the calling and why this film exists, and that the idea for doing something like this was planted years before the opportunity came to do it.
I think there's something to also the journey of getting to that place where there's highs, there's lows, there's like times where you're on top of the world, like, man, I can't believe I get to do this for a living. And then there's also times where you're like, I just want to live a normal life and not be consumed with this project that has turned into multiple projects.
Yes.
Which is, man, what a gift, but also a lot of responsibility, a lot of workload, learning how to juggle multiple things, figuring things out like publicists and distributors and all of these kind of things that aren't on the forefront of your mind, putting words to that and being able to talk through some of that and seeing God's faithfulness through it could be encouraging. And also, I think it'll be really encouraging for us at the end of the conversation to think about all that God has done and how faithful he's been through this whole process.
And it's like, I get reminded all the time from our distributor, the publicists, like filmmakers just want to make a film and they never think about, you know, everything that goes into getting a film out. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, like, you know, and a lot of times that is a producer's job, not a director's, but I wear multiple hats on the things I do. But you're right. When there's a lot of money getting thrown around in digits and you got to keep track of things and where money's going and what it's going to take to break even and where we're investing and the returns we're hoping to get, and you're juggling multiple projects and you're trying to tell these stories well and stick to the calling, it can be like a burden at times. And you're like under the weight, and I have to surrender over and over again. I have like dark nights with it. And I think you being a pastor can relate. The initial call is like, I want to shepherd people. I want to make sure people understand the word, disciple people. And then you get in a role and you realize there's a lot that encompasses that role, and it's not always fun. I think I try and tell people walking out your calling is the most fulfilling thing you'll ever do. But it's not like, oh, I figured out what God has called me to do, my purpose, and now it's easy street. No, you still take some hits, man. You're still in the ring. You're boxing, and you're going to take some hits from time to time. But you're going to land some stuff too. The main thing is just to remember we're walking this out, and you don't retreat. There's seasons to be still. You don't bail. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Because what's waiting on the other side is better if we push forward than if we go back.
Yeah. And even like, maybe I don't want to do this, or maybe I'm not supposed to do this. I think that's the other thing that happens where you go, maybe this was all a mistake, and you kind of forget all the other stuff beforehand. That's like, dude, you're clearly supposed to do this. Like, so like, you know, I think there's actually something to knowing God actually called you to something. Like, okay, I'm gonna expect whatever happens. I know he's with me. I know he's called me to it. Some of this, I guess, would be repeated in some of our older episodes, some of which are now like multiple years old now, but it's kind of been a recurring theme. And I think it's worth telling the whole story. Wise Old Crow. Where did that come from?
Yeah. So, okay, as we hop into that, so the film coming out, The Threshing Floor, just to give the overview of like what Wise Old Crow kind of launched. The Threshing Floor is what I would consider a testimony film that deals with my friend Tim Arrigo, and it's his journey into drug addiction and then his radical come to Jesus moment that freed him from a 10-year addiction. And we tell some side stories along the way, and we kind of try and humanize addiction, but then show that through all the struggles, God was the only thing that was going to get him out. So there's a lot of bad decisions that get made, and it's like, man, his life just keeps getting worse and worse. But the whole thing is because his only hope was God. It's called the threshing floor because the threshing floor is where they separated the straw from the wheat, a place of separation. And it sometimes in the Old Testament, it's an actual threshing floor. That was a thing they used. And sometimes it's used in a metaphorical sense as a place of revelation, a place of separation. And we called the film The Threshing Floor. My friend Brandon Phillips had actually suggested it, and it clicked right away because I'm like, some of us have gone through life's threshing floor, and we came out purified on the other side of it, but only if you're looking through the right lens, because some people are like, oh, that person has this horrible, like crazy story, and thank God you're not that anymore. And it's like, but that's what built up the character. And sometimes people who have really wild stories have a sincere love for God because they were saved from that. And that doesn't mean that like you have to go through gnarliness to have a sincere relationship with God. But I'm just saying we shouldn't judge people by their story.
And there's a very real where sometimes when people think they're the good guys in stories, they don't think they need that much grace or forgiveness. And for those who have gone to that limit, they recognize, oh my goodness, I was so in need of a savior. And you're forgiven much, you forgive much. You have like this like life of grace that's not about you, and all arrogance is kind of smashed down. And so
okay, so now as we go back, how did I end up making a film like The Threshing Floor, and how did I end up starting my company, and for what purpose? And I think it's a really cool story because in hindsight, I can see all of the little breadcrumbs. You get little glimpses and you're like, where's this going? Or why is this not happening? A lot of times it's why is this not happening, right? I've told this story in the podcast before, but I had started filming mainly because I was a skateboarder and I was starting a skate blog with friends, and my knee got really bad for a little while. It had kind of healed a bit, and then it got to a point where it was hit or miss. So some days we would go and skate and like I could make it work. And other days, even bending down to pop my board, when I would weight that knee, it could not hold it. So like it became very hard for me to skate. I couldn't jump off things anymore because we had started this like skate blog where we were like just going to film each other and make skate park edits. We had little flip video cameras, which were like point and shoot cameras. And it was like, well, I can still film and it still keeps me out with everyone. And then that led to buying a Canon T2i, which was my first DSLR, which I think was like $300 at the time, but it felt like a lot, you know? And then I bought a fisheye. And then Darren, who owned Siren and Reliant Skateboards, which were these Christian board brands that some of my friends, my roommates at the time, rode for. Brian Sumner rode for them. And he was like, hey, if I give you like boards and wheels, would you go out on filming missions, get clips for the guys, do little edits we could use for promos for the brands, and all, throw you product? And for me, it was like, that was awesome. And I had left Oakley and went to work at a skate shoe brand that ended up laying me off. It was not a good situation. I'm at the house. I'm on unemployment. Have everyone I know putting in calls with Vans and all their friends at different brands trying to get me a job, and nothing was working out at the time. It's like, okay, well, I have nothing to do, and now at least I can get like free boards and stuff to go film my friends. And then all of a sudden, my friend and roommate rode for Bones and this gibberish clothing company, and then they started like, hey, if Brad gives us clips, we'll send him a box of shirts or whatever. So that's really how my filming journey started. Eventually, a manager came and talked to me. I end up back at Oakley, back in my old job, which was very humbling at the time. And I'm still filming, but I'm burning out on skating. So my now wife, then fiance, worked at Paul Mitchell, and they're like, hey, will Brad film this fashion night and do like an event recap? So like I started just like experimenting with filming other things. And I keep trying to get a job in the video department at Oakley, and they just like every time are like, you don't have experience. You don't have experience. And it's like, can I get experience? No email back, you know? Every time a position opened. Eventually, another producer spot in that department opened up. I'm at a coworker's desk and he's like, are you going to apply for it? And I was like, I'm sick of applying for it, man. I'm not going to go through the heartache of just being turned down again. And there's a guy from IT working under a desk, 2 desks over, that I didn't even know he was there. And he pops up and he goes, hey, sorry to eavesdrop on your conversation, but there's these guys. One was in global marketing and one's in finance, and they have a brand and they film all sorts of Oakley events and stuff. I bet they would let you like come and work with them. They're like solid guys. And I'm like, whoa, can I get their info? So he sets it up. I reach out to them. They take me out to lunch. And all of a sudden I'm freelancing with them and I'm doing weddings. I do like a couple TED Talk events at Oakley, like when TED Talks were still going off. We shoot Oakley events. We're shooting all types of stuff, and they're letting me use like real cameras, and, you know, they started paying me, and it wasn't crazy money. I wasn't quitting my job, but it was like, now I'm actually earning money. And this whole time I'm thinking, if I could ever do video for a living, I would be so happy. Like that would be enough. I start building up my pipeline as a freelancer, shooting weddings, shooting events. I'm working with them. Oakley goes through a gnarly merger, culture changes, everyone's getting laid off. I'm not laid off, but they were going to demote me, but let me keep my pay. And I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. So I thought my pipeline was stable enough to quit. So I quit. It was not. It got gnarly. We had Cody, and all of a sudden my wife isn't working full time. And we're trying to split it. And we had like a really gnarly season. Those contacts that I made that I was freelancing, their company split. And one of them synced up with the guy who was the head cinematographer at Oakley for 10 years. And they started a company called Thatch Creative. And he came to me and I was like living on a prayer. I interviewed at Spy. I'm like, maybe this isn't meant to happen for me.
Which is in Carlsbad.
Yeah, across from where we're filming right now.
Literally right there. Yeah.
I interviewed in that building for an account manager position. And all of a sudden, my friend Evan called me and he was like, look, we're landing way more contracts than, you know, we expected, and we need to hire someone. And I told Dave, we're just going to hire you. We're not going to interview. So just let me know what your salary needs to be. And I was like, whoa. Because at this point, I had said the prayer, where it's like, God, if you don't give me a lifeline, like I'm done. I'm going back to the corporate world, like whatever I had to do. And I started working with Thatch, and the first job we went on was an Under Armour job. Or actually, I think the first one was an Adidas Coachella after party. They had built this ice sculpture, and it was a photo exhibit, and we were doing all the photography inside of it. And then we did an Under Armour commercial, rented out a baseball stadium. Like, I came down to Carlsbad. It's one of the first times I'd come down to Carlsbad. We shot up on the cliffs over at State Beach. And it was just crazy. Like, they bought a red camera. Like, the first week I was there, it was a $50,000 camera. And it's like they're letting me shoot on it. And it was just like, whoa, this is my film school. And as much as I always thought if I could just make a living doing video, I would be so happy. I'm so grateful for that experience. But a couple years down the line, we're doing makeup commercials, and my boss, Dave, and I were like staying up till 2, 3 in the morning to hit deadlines. Dave has 2 kids. He's sleeping at the office doing like 3D work because it takes forever. It was getting gnarly, stressed so hard, and you like kill yourself to make deadlines. And then the client posts the video, and a week later, they're like, that's old news now. And it was just like, what am I doing? And I always felt like video was God's idea for me. And it was like, I'm not serving God. Like, I do a video for like the church here or there, like maybe like whatever, like a recap video once a year. But like, video is God's idea, and I just want to serve him. And I remember having a conversation with a friend, and he was just like, quit overthinking it. You do a cool job every so often to boast about, and the rest are just, they pay your bills. And it was like, that's not me. I don't know why I am the way I am, But like that thing in me that's looking for like, I just want to do something that honors God. Like that's not going to go away just because my bills are paid. Like it's not. And the company goes through a split and it got really ugly. And then, you know, we don't even need to talk about that, but the owners split and parted ways. And I felt like a kid in a divorce. And I went with my boss, who is very much a mentor to me, but he was not necessarily like the producer, the client lander. We went out on a Jeep excursion, 10 days in the New England belt, and we're filming for Nitto tires and tires spinning and rock crawling up stuff. And it was a blast. But like we had gone from making like a lot of money as a company and I was just on salary. It was starting to get rough and the client divide hadn't worked out how it was supposed to in the finalized contracts. And there was just a lot of ugliness happening. And all of a sudden a pandemic hits. And I think my boss was already struggling to like keep me with him and pay my salary because he's also got his own family. And, you know, he didn't account for having to like rebuild a business. And all of a sudden, we're non-essential. We were about to do a 6-figure contract for the Marriott in Anaheim. And they're just like, that's gone. You know, everyone froze their marketing budget. Every studio froze. You couldn't rent a studio. If you needed extra lighting gear or a grip truck, no one is working. So we're on pandemic relief. And Dave kind of told me, like, I'm going to disperse the business. If at some point later on, we can come back, we will, but I'm going to give you severance. And he said, I'm really sorry. I have to end things. And I understood, but now we're in a pandemic. We're locked in the house. I'm at a reset. So it's like the stuff you've been talking about, like now's the time if you're going to make that happen.
Like you saw it as like an opportunity to like maybe see what else you could do, what else is out there.
And this is when we reconnected, actually.
Right.
I had been working on a Holocaust survivor documentary off and on. It wasn't my project, but I was helping direct and edit it. Well, now I'm at home on pandemic relief and I have plenty of time. I remember I was talking to Brandon Phillips and we were talking and I just said, I feel like God has pressed on me that he's going to use video for me to tell like gritty stories about addiction and gnarliness that would bring him glory. Like, I just feel like that's where this is going. I want to make Vice, but Vice for Christians, where we don't ignore gritty journalism and we don't pretend like nothing bad happens. But the ultimate message is that God is working in these things.
Like not glorifying the things, but like getting into them to show that God can meet people even there.
Yes. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know how that's going to happen. I just felt it. Like, you know, when something feels like it was pressed on you, it's almost like it clicked in my head, the discernment of like, this is why God made you a filmer. This is why you can't shake the feeling of wanting to serve God with video, even though you're doing just fine working at the agency. You know, I got to work with the Rams several times. I shot their Super Bowl headshots. Like, I don't want to brag about all that stuff, but I'm saying this for any kid or anyone out there that thinks you'll have the career milestone that you can tell your friends about and you'll finally feel enough. It didn't. It was awesome to get some behind the scenes, you know, shooting Jared Goff that day. And the next day, it didn't matter anymore. And most of the people I shared it with that I'm like, how cool is this? Or just like, oh, whatever. There was no fruit there. It felt fruitless. I want to make like little testimony videos. And the reason for that is testimony videos always spoke to me. The night I became a Christian, I started watching testimony videos and YouTube was a new thing. This is like 2007. And I'm watching like I Am Seconds from like way back then. And it always spoke to me, but I always felt like I would have friends who aren't Christians that were going through alcoholism or things. And I'm like, I wish I could send them something that would like speak to them about what they're going through, but like also tell them that like God wants to heal them. And I couldn't find a lot of that. Either it glossed over the backstory or it didn't feel like it was speaking our language from the crowd I come from and some of the people I still care about. And I don't mean to like throw rocks at anyone. I really don't. But
like something like the Christians would enjoy, even no matter where you came from, you'd enjoy it because you'd be able to fill in some of the blanks. Whereas you're seeing it as, how can we go in and meet the people that are still there?
Yes.
In those spots to where it's like, oh, wow, you actually do remember what that feels like. You actually do know the struggle and the fight and all of that.
Yeah, and then a final confirmation kind of came a few months later. My friend Chris Perrin, who's my tattoo artist, has a tattoo shop in Costa Mesa called Life After Death. And Chris has ministered to a lot of people. He uses tattooing as like, this is what I do, but I'm in the business of like relationships. His friend Jimmy, who is a producer, wanted to work on a film that he wrote a script for. Years before that, I did like a little video on the shop, and he's like, hey, let's talk to that guy. So I went up and had lunch, and he was like, would you be interested in being a director of photography on this? And I was like, send me the script. And we're still on lockdown, right? So every night after my family goes to bed, I'm just watching films, like old, like Total Recall, like all sorts of stuff that I hadn't seen in years. I think a lot of people are doing that, just being on Netflix, right? And I'm looking at how they're filming things, and I'm going through the script, and I'm shot listing things, and I'm creating mood boards on like the type of looks we would have on scenes, really vibing out on it. And the next time I saw him, he was telling me about this other script he had too. And we're standing there, and we had just prayed, but we're standing and he's talking. And as he's talking, it was another thing where all of a sudden it clicked in my head. And I was like, I feel like God just told me this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. That sounds really simple, but at the time it literally gave me goosebumps. Like all of a sudden it clicked, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. And then that film didn't end up working out. He was talking to like Lindsay from In-N-Out about funding it. And then her team was like, hey, In-N-Out can't be tying themselves to doing films now. Like, we're a hamburger brand. Like, what?
A good one.
But Lindsay's a Christian, and she comes from that background too. And she's, you know, she has a gritty background, and she was down, but I think her team pumped the brakes on it. And so I'm doing a testimony series, and you were number 2 in that series. And it was birthed out of the idea of like, I want to do like testimony videos that I could send to people that like speak our language.
You know, it's funny. I remember literally at the church right here it was during COVID. Friday nights, we would film Sunday morning messages. You know, worship and message and stuff, because everything was online at that point. And I remember walking around the building talking to you about that. You were still in Orange County. Yeah. And I remember you mentioning like Wise Old Crow, and mentioning like this whole, what you said, like this vision for, I know I'm supposed to do this. And it was so basic at that point. Like, you didn't know how it was gonna play out, but it was like, I know this is what I want to do. But I remember talking to you about it, and the excitement you had, and I was just like, yeah, it's I bring that up just because I remember that. You know what's funny is like, you talking about this, it was so exciting for me too, because I've gotten to see the whole thing play out.
Quite a few things.
Yeah, a lot of conversations, a lot of
there's two very pivotal conversations we had, because if we're honest, I started Wise Old Crow. And Wise Old Crow was very much inspired by the scene that we both grew up in, even like a lot of old album covers and stuff. And it's my logo's like a camera, and there's a crow sitting on top of it and this creepy tree behind it. But I started it and I got lost in it. You would think these moments of like, this is what you're going to be doing the rest of your life, and this is how God's going to use me. And knowing that, I would have walked right into it. I did not. I'm still shooting music videos that have nothing to do with my faith, commercials for brands, whatever. And I had to earn money, but like, I'm building an Instagram that does not look like a faith-based film company at all. And I'm working on testimony films, and I'm like looking for my friends that are skaters, surfers, punk rock kids to share their testimony and try and do it in a way that would speak to people. And I end up reconnecting with an old friend. His name's Tim Arrigo. Went to junior high together, grew up skating, went to high school together. I saw him at a skate park when we were 22, and he was like strung out. And the girl he's with is knotted out on the grass. This is a BB skate park in Mission Viejo. This is a suburb.
Oh, yeah. That's like a nice area. Yeah.
She's knotted out. Tim is out of it. And I'm like pretty heavily in a pill addiction that I didn't recognize as a pill addiction back then. I thought I was just, quote unquote, being young and partying. That was not what was going on, but it's easy to justify back then. And, you know, whatever it was, 2021, we reconnect, and I see this like muscular guy with a wife and a kid and a business. And I'm like, what happened here? When his thing was suggested on Facebook and I clicked on it, the most recent post was him leading prayer at his church. And I reached out. I'm like, I'm so stoked for you, dude. I'm like, I don't know if you would remember the last time I saw you, but it was at BB. It was back in this time era, and this is the interaction. And I see you're a Christian. I'm a Christian as well. And it's just really cool to see where we've come from back then. And he was just like, I don't remember that interaction at all, but like, it's great to hear from you. And we start talking, and I go to shoot a testimony video with them. And he starts telling me like the most wild testimony I had heard in a long time. Could we get people to like corroborate some of these stories? Like, will your parents talk to me on camera? And he's like, yeah, I think they will. Will any friends that were there? And all of a sudden it went from 6-minute testimony piece to let's make a short film to I think there's an actual film idea here. And then I did everything in my power to get said film funded, and it just did not work.
Kind of like the crowdfunding approach.
I met with nonprofits. I met with Teen Challenge. Teen Challenge is a huge organization, and it's not just teens anymore. It's all sorts of people. The Green family who owns Hobby Lobby's on their board. Lindsay from In and Out's on their board. That, like, to their credit, I fully understand this, but I met with the VP over the California chapter, and we hung out for like 3 hours, and he encouraged me so much. And at the end of it, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to get our board to approve giving you finances when your subject didn't go through our program. And you have to understand, it's like, what, you're going to go to this organization that like has nothing to actually do with said film, and they're just going to free up a 6-figure budget for you and just hand it to you, and then you're going to go and make your dream happen. It's like, I get it now. I think I thought like, we'll give you guys a space in the film to talk about recovery and how you approach it from the Christian standpoint, and like we'll line it up, you know? But he's like, I just don't know how it's going to happen. And then I tried to crowdfund it, and I want to honor everyone who donated to that because we're so thankful. But, you know, we raised about $5,000, and that wasn't going to fund a feature film. But I'd gone all in at that point. I had been living on savings for 3 months working on the proof of concept. So we had started filming. We were going to like our old junior high and the continuation school and our high school, and this motel where Tim got his teeth knocked out and a drug deal gone wrong. And we're like going places, you know? I moved down to Carlsbad because I had connected with you and started coming down, and I just felt lost up in Orange County. Like, I feel like I'm in between. Like, I don't know what the next season's bringing. I just felt like right being down here. And Alyssa was not down to move to Carlsbad. That was like big and scary. And like, are we really going to do that? But I came to service here, and I'm driving home Sunday morning, and I'm looking on the side of the freeway, and I felt like God just said, you're going to be living here. And we had almost moved down a year before or something, and I chickened out, and I always felt like I was missing out. Every time we'd go to the San Diego Zoo and pass Carlsbad, I'm like, man, like I should have been down there, and you got scared. And I came back and I told Alyssa, I feel like we're supposed to be down there. I'm like, just go to service next week. I'll hang out here with the kids. And if God doesn't confirm it with you, then we won't go. She came down. She felt it too. She's like, I think we're supposed to do life down there. We moved down. It's been the greatest season for my wife too, building relationships with designers, and she does art installations for interior designers. She never wants to leave Carlsbad now. Like, she loves it. It's been 3 years.
I remember her coming.
We moved down, and nothing is happening on this film. It's at a standstill. I don't know what to do. Nothing is working out. With all my heart, I thought I'm supposed to make this film. None of it's happening. I don't know what to do. And we're at a point where we're starting to drown because I had gone all in on this. So like my clients weren't calling anymore. Like I wasn't freelancing with people. I had been freelancing a little bit with Saddleback Church up in Orange County too. I had cut them off. You have no other source of income. You've been working on this film because you were so certain God told you to do it that you're like, it's going to happen. And now it's quiet. And we're living on savings, and we're like, I don't think we can keep this up. And we're at a point of talking to my mom, and it's like, maybe we need to move out to Florida and be close to you. Like, I don't know if we could afford to stay in California. Like, we're drowning. So here's the cool part of the story. I came and I talked to you, and I was very discouraged. And I remember you were like, I can't tell you how it's going to happen, but if God told you he's going to do something, like, he's going to do it. And I made a decision, and we had a pretty decent conversation. It was probably an hour long. And I went home and I was like, you know what? The first teaser trailer I put out when it was still called The Bottom Runs Deep or whatever, about rock bottom, it was like, I don't think there was a lot of the faith weaved in there. It looked very much like an addiction film. And I said, I'm going to actually leave the chips on the table, meaning this is meant to be about God. I'm going to make a trailer that's so obviously about our faith and not just the addiction elements. Everyone else would tell you, dude, anything over 2.5 minutes, no one's going to watch it. This was like 6.5 minutes. It was long. It had a really emotional overdose story in there. At that point, I had filmed with Joe Fury up at his place, who's become like a father figure in my life, just like such a great guy. And I'm like, I'm going to put this out. And if nothing ever becomes of it, I'll know that I put out this 6.5 minute trailer that in its form will speak to someone. And we were going to put it out on a Friday. The day before on a Thursday, Tim's like, I'm sending your info to someone. Joe has a friend that like wants to know what's going on with the film. And in my head, what I hear is someone probably donated to the GoFundMe and they're upset that the film's not coming out. And they're like trying to press me on what's actually going on because they're upset that they donated or something, you know? And that's the headspace I'm going in on.
Which kind of tells you where you're at.
I feel
like the sky
shamed.
is falling.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I get a phone call from my now friend Reed. That was like the most simple phone call. It's hilarious to think about. I like love Reed so much too. He's become my friend more than anything. But Reed calls me and he's like, hey, Joe Fury sent me a teaser for your film. What's going on with it? And I start to explain and he's just like, yeah, okay. How much do you need? And I'm like, well, I have a budget or whatever. And he's like, cool, it's done. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, draft up a contract and we'll figure it out and I'll wire you the money. And I was like, what just happened? It would turn out Joe had sent him this trailer 2 months ago and he had never watched it. And first, who goes back 2 months into a text message they forgot to read? God was letting me get to the end of myself so that I would get prioritized again. I truly believe that God was allowing me to get to the end of myself so that he could say, now I'm going to provide for you, but you're going to do it right. It's so cool. I would be friends with Reed regardless. Like, we're both punk rock kids. He has so much character. He's a huge part of what I do now. And I guess the reason I say that is like, this is a guy that like every time I get off the phone with him, it's like, I love you, dude. And we like joke about old punk rock bands and Operation Ivy and like old stuff. We're buddies, and I would not have that relationship if Teen Challenge had put up the money for a guaranteed return on investment. Now I have a business partner who's like believes in what I'm doing and has partnered with me to make other films happen as well. And only God could have lined that up. So all of my ideas about how we're going to fund this thing and how it's all going to go down, it's like God, I think the whole time was just like, the money is going to come through someone you don't even know yet.
I mean, obviously remember all these conversations and the whole kind of process, but I remember the liberation you felt when you decided like, all right, if God's going to do it, then I don't have to worry about any of the other stuff. It's like kind of like hedging your bets where you're like, I want it to still be, I still want it to be appealing to like the masses because I need the masses. Like I kind of want it to still kind of check all the boxes. So I don't alienate anyone that wants to be a part of it or give to it or anything like that. And then all of a sudden it was like clear as day. You were like, oh, no, this is going to be about what God can do. That's what it's going to be about. And so if I go down, I'm going down doing that, which is crazy. Like within, I mean, was it like a week or something, or how long was the actual time frame? It was like flipped, and that, you know, you met Reed and it was like every problem you had before was like immediately solved. It's not like it's always going to be easy, which we're going to talk about. It certainly has not been, but if he's in it, he's in it. It was such a beautiful to
really
watch.
Is,
I think all of a sudden I watched you flip, and it was like, as soon as you flipped, you were like liberated. And as soon as you were liberated, God was like, okay, now you get it. I love that you said you had these two, you know, I know I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to move to Carlsbad, these kind of things. But there's so much in between, and there's so much like decisions in between and uncertainty in between on how that plays out, what that means. I mean, even finding a place to live in Carlsbad at that point was gnarly, you know, the way it worked out. You're in a community that's a beautiful community that you guys have like these friends, and it's just like your own little like church in the church kind of a thing. And then, and then Taylor moved in, and
Taylor's our neighbor now.
I know, we were saying we need to start like a home group, a community group in your neighborhood. And then invite people. Anyway, side note, but like all that to say, there's all these other little decisions that are made in the process. And you're like, all right, Lord, I know you're in it, but like, I don't want to mess it up. I want to make sure I do it right. And you use people, so I don't want to like alienate anybody. And you're like, all right, God, you know what? I want to do something that legit glorifies you. And then he meets you with, oh, well, then I got something for you.
Yeah. I mean, Joe just said it to me yesterday on the phone, and sometimes we need the reminder, but he's like, you are not in competition with Warner Brothers or Lionsgate or any, like what God has for you, God has for you. Mm-hmm. Your job is to be a good steward over it, but like, you're not worried about, oh, how do I market it right so I build the thing? And you say this a lot too. If you build it, you got to maintain it then. Mm-hmm. You know, if God builds it, then it's his job to take care of it. And you're just like walking in it and being a good steward over what you've been entrusted to. Mm-hmm. I could not have written the story this way. I've been told several times too, our distributor was like, no one has a story like yours. He's like, you got 3 films funded before the first came out. That doesn't happen.
That's so wild.
And you know what's really, to actually talk about the film, is I was reflecting on this. I did an interview with LA Weekly or whatever, and I was reflecting on it.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Brad always downplays everything.
It's cool, but I was like, Tim and I aren't the same guys we were when we started this film. You can't go to your junior high and your high school and the skate park you grew up skating with someone that you grew up like around and not have it affect you. To process that in a way and go back. I mean, we went to the crash site that he should have died in North Las Vegas. He nodded out in a car. The car crashed. If she didn't crash the car so that the ambulance came, they revived him on site. He would have died in this car driving out of Vegas. What does it do to someone to bring them back to a location they haven't been to since that happened and walk through it and talk about what he remembers from that moment and reflect on God's kindness? It seemed like chaos. It wasn't.
They're kind of reliving it all. It's probably been quite therapeutic for him and for you, even like seeing all of it and experiencing it with him. And kind of like you see the full, how much really was going on.
And I think God has to reveal what he plans to heal. I'm going to encourage anyone, if something continues to reoccur in your life, it may be because God is drawing it to the surface because he wants to do a work there. And stuffing it back down is not the road to healing, right? So if emotions always get triggered when you talk about your childhood or some event that happened in your life, I would be willing to bet that God is drawing that to the surface because he wants to heal some brokenness there. And if every time it comes up, we run from it, that healing can't happen. And in my case, hanging out with Tim and some of these guys and Joe Fury for a few years working on this film, I came to process, I never called myself an addict. I just never did. I was someone who couldn't be sober, and then I found God, and a lot of that just got taken away. I never went to rehab. I was never in AA. And I think it created the false security of like, I'm not one of them. And there's a pride there and a self-righteousness, right? What I realized while working on this is that addiction is a symptom. So when you have a cold, you have symptoms flare up, right? If you have a headache or you have a cough, you can treat the symptom, but the root's got to get fixed, right? That's why we try and take in fluids and vitamin C so that we can give our body what it needs to fight the actual cause so that the symptoms will alleviate. Now, there are times where someone is so addicted to a substance that they need to be detoxed. They need to be separated from the physical thing, right? But if all you ever do is treat it like don't do the thing, but you don't deal with whatever's going on in you that led you to the thing, it'll manifest in other areas.
There will be a new thing.
I realized while working on this film, some of the hurt and brokenness that I'm not blaming anyone for. It is what it is. Feelings would surface over the years, like when Cody was born, stuff would come up and, kind of break me down. And I never dealt with, why couldn't you be sober? Was it, oh, you just like the way drugs feel and then it led you to harder drugs? Because that's a narrative out there, right? And for me, it was, I never felt like enough And because my dad had left, he loved me. He followed the work. It's not like he didn't want to be there, but as a kid, you absorb everything. And I absorbed that I wasn't worth staying for. And my relationship with my stepdad was so toxic that even when I was straight edge, I had some issues, you know? And I was always depressed and always sad. And I always felt like you're not valuable. You were an accident to begin with. There's just nothing going on for you. And it led to deep insecurity. And then I would overcompensate and get confrontational with my friends. If like anyone said anything about me, I'm like trying to fight them at lunch. And I'm not like a vicious guy either. No one would look at me and be like, oh, that guy's probably like aggressive. And that's not my demeanor. I was insecure, you know? Mm-hmm. And what drugs did is all that kind of gets drowned out for a bit. So when you take away the thing that you're using to solve your problems, where does the insecurity and the not feeling enough go? Like God came into my life and I sincerely had a radical experience with God. And I felt like, okay, I am loved. I do have a purpose, but there's still a piece of you that if you haven't healed the father wound, that you kind of go to Father God, and the same thing is like, do I have to earn my love with you, right? If I do enough ministry stuff, like, will I be enough? If I do enough of this, if I pray enough, if I read the Bible enough, if I do the thing you're supposed to do, will you love me? And I think you do those things because God does love you, not so that he will love you, you know? You want to know about God, so you read your Bible because you want him to speak to you, not to earn favor with him. And because I hadn't dealt with any of that, I had a validation issue. If I went above and beyond and my bosses are stoked on me and like we're having a good time on a shoot, then I feel on top of the world. And if the ball gets dropped, then I feel like a loser and I want to quit my job. And it's like, well, then whatever with all this, you know, and you're riding the roller coaster. Why? Because I'm still trying to get my validation from people. So addiction is using external sources to try and solve an internal problem. It'll never work. And that goes for anything. If you're addicted to shopping, sometimes you'll see people who are addicted to like plastic surgery. We see that in celebrity culture where it's like, if I look young again, will that be enough? I guess not, because now I had a nose job and now I gotta like get a facelift and I gotta do this and that. Food addictions, there's all sorts of things that it's like, I'm trying to chase a feeling or avoid a feeling using external factors to make me feel okay internally, but the only thing that's going to make you feel okay internal is true healing. And that is what the Threshing Floor is about. It's about, we're not downplaying rehab or any of these things, but we're saying for Tim, nothing worked until he full surrendered, gave his life to Jesus, and all of a sudden, all that internal junk started to get dealt with. And then he got into a community at his place that could help him deal with that. And now look at how many people he's helped. He worked at like Treehouse. He's got so many hours counseling. For 10 years, he's working at recovery centers. He's had more friends die than anyone I know. But the amount of people that he's helped, it's insane. And then he ended up starting his own business. And that's like, the film tells that journey. Mm-hmm. That's what Wise Old Crow has become. If you go and you read the Bible, God is the master storyteller. So if I want to tell stories, I'm going to look at who created the stories, because all we're ever doing in Hollywood or whatever is recreating like the story of Jesus in different ways, right? The man on a mission, the hero must fall. That's like the crucifixion, right? Mm-hmm. The hero's got to fall, but then he rises again. There's the resurrection, right?
Just when all hope is lost.
Yeah, it's like we're just recreating God's stories over and over. But you take any of them. Abraham, the father of the faith, was afraid, so told people his wife was a sister more than once. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. There's moments where God never takes the mistakes or the slip-ups and says, like, I'm going to blot those out so I can tell a story that would never discourage anyone. He's like, look how I work in this guy's mess. Joseph didn't like blow it, but when you look at Joseph's story from his brothers throwing him in the pit to getting sold into slavery to getting falsely accused of something, ending up in jail, that's a gnarly story. And you know what? When he's overseeing the kingdom, God put him in this elevated position and his brothers show up. What happens? He's weeping and like wailing and everyone's like, what is going on? There is deep trauma there that Joseph is coming to terms with, and he chooses to forgive. And it's like, that is the awesome part of all that mess, is that because of who God is, Joseph says, what you intended for evil, he intended for good. and it's okay. I'm going to let it go.
And the interesting part of that, there's two sides to that story.
Yeah.
They thought, oh my gosh, he's going to kill us. Like he's in power to like, you know, have his revenge. And then he says, no, listen, that part, right? And then their dad dies, right? Jacob dies. And then again, they're scared. They still have this guilty conscience. And he's like, no, guys, stop. I already told you, like, you don't know. I get it. Like God was doing something bigger than any of us could have seen. And it's so sometimes you're like the Joseph where you go, man, I've had all these things happen to me, sins done to me. And then you have his brothers who have done the sins. And both of us find our healing in forgiveness, like for the forgiver and those who have been forgiven. But God uses these messy stories to show that he redeems. And the story of Jesus is the story throughout the whole Bible.
My thoughts may have changed on it over the years, but in the secular genre, you have all different types of films, right? GPG all the way up. Different genres. There's comedy, there's horror, there's drama, there's whatever, there's crossovers. And then in the Christian avenue, it feels like it's only Christian if it's family friendly. It's got to be like a God's Not Dead where like we don't talk about any of the messiness that like hoist the flag in the beginning, like make sure people know it's a Christian film from the opening scene. And I felt like I don't fit into either of those categories where it's like, I don't want to make secular films. I don't. But while Christian first films may encourage other Christians, I think they do very little to reach people more often than not. Not that God can't use them, but they feel more appointed to like, you know, when Jesus Revolution came out, I don't know any non-Christians that went and saw it. Everyone in the church went and saw it, and I think people were encouraged by it. But for me, I'm like, you're spending a lot of money to tell a story that most of the people watching the film already knew. So it's like, what is it adding to like the kingdom? And I don't know. Only God knows. And it's almost irrelevant because it's like, that's not the call on me. The call on me is where is the margin, right? The people that aren't going to watch a Christian first audience film because they're like, that's like some Christian film, right? But it wouldn't be secular because we're unapologetic when we do talk about the faith. But there may be sections like the Threshing Floor. I would say the first hour of the film is seasoned with salt. You will catch some lingo here and there that you're like, wait, what did he just say? Like he'll mention God in like a sequence, but we're humanizing addiction and we're telling the story of how desperate his life had become. So if you only watched an hour of it, you'd be like, is it a Christian film? And then you hit his testimony section and you'd be like, oh, there's no way to look the other way on this.
Well, that is the solution.
And that's where most of our festival applications, I can track analytics on the link. And it's like a lot of the festival applications, they stopped watching the second Tim said, I fully surrendered to Christ. Boom. Stopped watching. Mm-hmm. Why? That was the trigger. Before we even talk about the church as a healing place or how the addict being relieved of the obsession of the addiction still requires him to learn how to live. He needs a renewal of the mind because all of our experiences are still there. So we need to be transformed. Mm-hmm. We haven't even gotten into any of that. Just the fact that he said he fully surrendered to Christ. Boom, done. We always get more support on the Christian side, but there's also times that people are like, you went too far here. Like, why did you have to have implied drug sequences?
Yeah, they may stop before they even get to the testimony part.
And that's okay too. I've always said Chris Jones, who's now the pastor of his place, but we've known each other a long time. He's like a punk rock. He's awesome. But he said something I've held on to for a long time. He said, Brad, you are Luke and your films are your book of Acts. You're just telling people what God's kids are out there doing. Luke was a physician, but he was also like an artist. And he's like, you are this generation's Luke in your area. You're just documenting like it's not about me, but this is what God is doing through his kids out there, you know? Do
you ever sense or have the temptation to go, man, maybe if we weren't so strong with the testimony part, like maybe it could have gotten more. Is that ever a thing in your mind?
Yes.
Or did you say, okay.
Most people know this. You definitely know this. I'm honest. Like I don't have a good poker face. You know, people generally know when I'm having a hard day or a good day or like I'm the information guy, for better or worse. It gets hard. I've worked so hard, and like our premiere at the festival was like a mess, and there was so much warfare on it, and like they almost didn't show our film after we flew to New Mexico to premiere it. Every step of the way has been a challenge, and God has overseen. But as we were talking about earlier, Satan, the accuser of the brethren, if you let him, will get in your head, and it goes right back to the garden. Hey, God's holding out on you. Oh, you think he has your best in mind? You think he's protecting you from what wouldn't be good for you? No. Eat the fruit, know what he knows, you'll be like him, enter into what is really meant for you. And it's disaster and it's chaos. And I think if we're all honest about it, it's hard, dude. When you see people that are seeing success in the same area you are, there's a piece of you that's like, dang. And it goes back to what Joe said. What God has for you, he has for you. You just need to be a good steward. But the reality is, if God wanted me to get into Sundance, I would have.
Well, and also I think that he's giving you these good like little marker posts of like, remember, I'm the one that blessed it. I will do with it what I want to do with it. You know, sometimes the fruit we'll never see. Like that's part of it. It's like there's always the temptation to produce a fruit that maybe isn't. You might even tell yourself it is, but you kind of know in the back of your head, I made that. But God has given you like this right at the very beginning. Don't forget. And this same thing he tells the children of Israel. You remember, like, I will fight for you. I will, with a strong and outstretched arm, go before you. But as soon as you forget about me, you will lose all your provision. By the way, it's different than you think anyway. Like whatever it feels like. Remember when you were successful and you're doing the Rams commercials and stuff, you don't think that Sundance could feel just as empty if you sold out?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, or getting a Netflix deal, but you know you didn't do what you were supposed to do. That would be worse than being faithful and not getting the results. Even if you got no results, you would know before you and the Lord, I was faithful with what you called me to do. I did it to the best of my ability. With what I felt like you were called me to do, my part in the body of Christ in the year 2025.
Here's the thing. It's always going to be tempting to compare yourself to what other peers are doing and their levels of success. And how do I line up with that? And you know what? That goes back to what I was saying about the validation issue I used to battle with. If I look for my validation and how I line up to my peers, and I gain self-righteousness and my worth and my validation out of, I'm doing better than this person, but maybe I'm not doing as well as that person, or they signed this deal, or, you know, my friend just signed a film with this studio. That's a roller coaster. What God has for you is, you know what? You've been called to something. It's the people that I'm making the films about that are like what's going out there to make the impact, right? And for me, it's about elevating voices I feel matter. So, you know, maybe it'd be fun to do some culturally relevant film that got into Sundance or some big festival, but it's like, that's not what I'm called to do. I'm called to elevate voices, in the Threshing Floor's case, talking about addiction in the most real way I've ever heard, where it's, you can genuinely be healed and be a new creation and let your story define where you're going, not where you have to stay. And now I'm doing a film, Tell Me About Tomorrow, that is dealing with Cooper Noriega, who was a TikTok influencer transitioning into modeling, and he took a Xanax and it was fentanyl and he passed away. And I'm working with his family and friends to tell his story. And that's been a gnarly story too. And I've like had a lot of emotions because I relate to him so much. He grew up a skateboarder. He grew up in Laguna Beach. I lived in Laguna Niguel. It's one city apart. His parents' faith is the only thing, you know. His dad told me this yesterday. He watched a cut of the film and he's like, we're working on the ending. And he's like, people need to know that, like, without God, we could not be doing anything we're doing right now. And we never properly heal from losing our son.
That has some wear and tear on you.
Yeah, it does.
Like being in the middle of those stories and trying to properly articulate it without trying to jump to the good right away and give the real story about how God actually met them in this and where God was still at work through it.
This is the coolest thing about calling, guys. We think in terms of the end result. If I'm going to make a film, then all it's about is having the made film and then where that's going to go and what accolades it gets. That's the flesh, right? The ends justify the means. And that's why throughout anything, whether it's a ministry job or a normal job, you'll hear of people that felt like their experience was less than good. And it's like, but we were building this thing, and all that matters is the thing that gets built. I do not believe that's how God works. My ministry is not just in having films. It's about the relationships that are built when I'm interviewing people on set, when we're having conversations, when we're unpacking emotions and then the cameras go off and I spend time with that person. It's about being sensitive to where people are at and making sure that the right messaging comes through and that we're not throwing people under the bus or putting out information that doesn't need to be put out just for the sake of building drama. So my faith plays a huge role in what I do, down to the fact of like, if someone comes to like work for me on set, I try and treat them as best as possible, because they're going to remember if I worked them really hard for like and undercut their rate and treated them poorly, they're not going to be like, I'm so glad I was a part of that film because it did really well. They're going to be like, it was a horrible experience working with that guy.
That's not how we operate. It's a much harder path though, than to just go, get it done no matter what it takes, however many people you have to fire, how much you got to do to get the most out of them, and you know, kind of chop off as many heads as you have to get yourself to the top. It's like, that's a lonely road in a world where that is how they get things done. It's funny. I was at the Goods donut shop a while back.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And I was in there, and I know the owner a little bit, and I'd brought my friend in because they were trying to learn croissants at the time. And he had worked in a bakery in San Francisco, and they were known for their croissants. And he was explaining their whole process and all this and that. And he's like, yeah, we use this. It's like the highest quality butter. Everything's highest quality ingredients. And he's like, yeah, my vendors are food suppliers are always telling us, you know, how much more money you could make if you just did this or did this. And he says, yeah, but then we wouldn't be what we are. We would be a normal donut shop. Like, you're missing the point. Like, that's not what we are. So we can't cut those kind of corners.
Yeah. Do what you're called to do as well as you can do it without cutting corners, because you don't know how the little things play out.
The little things might be the big things.
Joe and my friend Chris, the tattoo artist, says this too, is like, don't miss who's in front of you. Mm-hmm. There's a scene in Threshing Floor when we're talking about Kevin's death with his mom, Flo, and I left it in there, but you can hear me say, I'm so sorry. Do you want to stop for a second? And she says, no, it's okay. And we keep talking. And it's like, my heart is not, oh, this is going to be great because it'll hook the viewer and be emotional. My thing is like, you're pouring your heart out right now. Like, are you okay? Do we need to take time? Do you want me to turn off these lights and cameras for a second and like process, and then we can work through it again, you know? And I don't see a lot of that in my peers. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's like, I am who God created me to be, and I'm trying to walk it out the way God has called me to. And that means I don't need to worry about what other people are doing. I need to worry about what's in front of me.
Yeah, I love that about you, Brad. And I think it's important to even say, because you haven't been to Sundance, or, you know, didn't get into Sundance or haven't gotten the next Netflix deal or whatever, God has elevated this story still. I mean, I got to go to the Long Beach screening, and it was unbelievable. It was sold out. Like you said, there's always, I know your New Mexico one had a bunch of gnarliness, yeah. But even at that one, there were some sound issues, right? At the Long Beach. And the message came across so clear, and it was such a rejoicing and all of that. And then you've been part of a lot of film festivals and won some awards. And I know that's not something you like want to like, I mean, I know you're not like high on that, but all that to say, like, God hasn't just been like, oh, you're going to make this film and it's not going to do anything. It has gotten notoriety. People have noticed it. Everyone who watches it is rocked by it. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about some of the cool stuff that's happened, you know, with it being shown. Hard Faith, I know you guys won a couple awards, right?
Yeah, we got first place in documentary, and we got audience choice.
Yeah.
And that was cool. We would have never done the Long Beach, California premiere if we had gotten into a California festival. And Hard Faith came through after we had already booked the venue, and they were like 6 days apart. So it was just like cool that lined up, because like one could have easily bumped the other out, and I'm so thankful we did both. And it was just cool, man.
Like two very different experiences, right?
Yeah. So we had gotten into a festival in New Mexico that premiered at Las Cruces International, but the night was crazy. And God always does something, but there's always a lot of spiritual warfare and attack on it. They sold out another film and decided they were going to show it a second time, which does not happen. Let me just reiterate, that does not happen at a film festival. If you're there because you're a filmmaker, then you have a pass to the whole festival. Or some people can buy a pass to the whole festival. Or in this case, if it's a 4-day festival, they can buy a day pass so they can go in any theater they want for the day. Or some people can go and just buy a ticket to see an individual film. And that makes it very hard to calculate if something is going to sell out, how many seats have been bought. Because if people who have a 3-day pass, a 1-day pass, or a filmmaker go and fill up seats in a theater, and then you're selling individual tickets, it's really hard to know until it's about to show. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that we don't have enough seats. So they should have just refunded people. But what they did is they decided that instead of showing our film right after, that they were just going to show the film a second time. And they're like, oh, it's all good. Like, we're moving you to another theater. And what I know now is this theater file, it's a very specific file, and it usually takes about an hour to load into a projector. So it was loaded into the projector in the theater we were going to show at. When they moved us, it had to be loaded in. And basically, while that was happening, it was taking too long, and they just told us it's not working. And we're like, okay, what do you want us to do with that? They're like, we think we're just going to show you Sunday. And this was a Friday. And we're like, we fly out tomorrow morning. Like, we flew out from California. You know that. I know you know that because there's an email, you know? And they're like, sorry, we don't know what to do. And there was another film that the producer was coming to that was a Hollywood film that was not premiering there, but it was showing in multiple theaters. And we're like, we think you should cancel one of those showings and give us their theater slot. And they were trying not to do that, but the head guy who runs the festival came down because the producer of that other film is his friend, and like he found out what was going on, and he's like, what's happening? And he came up to us so apologetic and was like, we're showing your film. Like, that's part of the film festival experience. If it sells out, it sells out. Like, you don't bump someone. And he had fired the head programmer that was running the night. They ended up showing it off a hard drive. Thank God I had a hard drive back at the hotel. I ran back to the hotel. I brought the hard drive so that we could play it off a ProRes file instead of the projector file. But what happened is an audience that was probably like 100 people outside of a theater, now 2.5 hours later, after all of this back and forth commotion, people don't know if they're even going to show it. And if they're not there for you, they just wanted to see the film, they've now wandered into other theaters. Maybe they've left. So by the time we show it, our audience went from a huge crowd down to like 15 people. So that's real discouraging. Mm-hmm. There's also the shame that you and 2 of your friends flew out to New Mexico to premiere a film, and they're treating your film like we don't even care if we show it. That really damaged my ego and hurt my feelings, you know? Now, what I found out later, the head programmer that had bumped our film was a second unit director on the film she bumped us for, and is trying to make her career as a director. So now you put 2 and 2 together. They sold it out. She probably had friends and family that came to see the film that she had worked on that couldn't get in. So she made a very selfish decision that I'm going to show the film that I worked on a second time so that people can see it. Maybe there was someone who's a big deal there that she thought might be able to help her career. And I think that's also why she got fired that night, is even though it wasn't vocalized to us that night, I think the founder found out what she had did and was like, this is unacceptable. I didn't realize until I saw it on IMDb in her profile that it's like, oh, she worked on that film. Like, that's a bummer. Now, what did God do? Because it sounds like this was just like man, that sounds horrible.
Like failure.
My friend Cameron, who tattooed the Jesus on my chest, did a majority of my sleeve, who was a recovering and then relapsed to heroin. In our friendship, I was the first Christian that like really ever talked to him in a way he could understand, because we would skate together and I took him to church for the first time in like forever. And he'd always tell me like, you were the coolest guy I ever met who was a Christian. And like, he just bonded with me. And he was originally friends with my ex-girlfriend, but after that breakup, we remained friends and we lived together at one point, and then he relapsed and things got a little shaky. But he's now married. He has a kid. He's doing really well. And he happened to live 45 minutes from where that festival was. So I invited him out. And even though him and his wife were on a date night and paying a babysitter, he stuck it out and he watched the whole film. Even though there was only like 15, 20 people there, people were moved and our Q&A went off. And that founder wandered back into our Q&A and saw what was going on and gave us a business card where he's like, I think I can help you get distribution. Like, he was moved by what he saw. But Tim told me that night, he's like, I think Cameron got healed of some stuff last night. And I'm like, really? The next morning I got a text that was like, when you came into my life, I felt like a piece of garbage. And like, you never, makes me emotional thinking about it. He's like, you never treated me like that. You were never judgmental. Like, you were always a good friend to me. And he's like, I never like realized you could make like a piece of art like that. And it was like so impactful. And it's like, man, I would have done that if it was just for Cameron. Mm-hmm. If that film helped him let go of some of it, then it's all worth it. I would have flown to New Mexico for that. You know, I don't think the demonic realm enjoys it when we show this film, because addiction is keeping people in bondage, and it's keeping people in the narrative that you're broken and you can't be fixed. You're damaged goods. Oh, if you breached into meth use or heroin use, you're damaged goods. Fentanyl use, sorry. And our film conveys a message that it's like, you can come back from any of that. You know, God will bring you back from any of that. You are not too far gone. I promise you, you are not too far gone.
He raises the dead.
Yeah.
It's like, no matter where you're at. Yeah.
So by the time, you know, Long Beach happened, that was a highlight moment because we premiere in California. It sold out. There's 300 people there or something. We did an addiction panel after. When Tim shared his testimony, the audience erupted in like clapping and cheering. Like, I got chills when it happened. It was like, I was sitting next to Tim with our wives too, and it was gnarly. My mom was there, my stepdad. It was just crazy. Like, it was timed out where my mom was out from Florida, from Orlando, and it was such a high moment. And then we went to Hard Faith, and like Riley Taylor was there, another Calvary pastor, and we got to hang out with each other and get to know each other. And it showed there, and it was kind of dead silent for most of the film. And I felt like it wasn't like at the time, I was like, I don't know if it was received very well, you know?
Well, especially in comparison.
Yes, but I had a really good time. But, you know, it was like, again, God loves to check my ego because I think he knows, like, you get a little prone to it, brother, like in this self-righteousness.
What's funny is like Riley was texting me because we're good friends. We were in like our master's cohort together. And so like he was texting me, he's like, dude, I'm hanging out with Brad. He's awesome. He's like, and he just recently said, he's like, dude, that was the best film of the whole festival. Brad had the best film in the whole festival.
That's so nice of him, dude.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's funny. Like, you're having all these feelings and I'm like getting texts from him that's like, this was insane. Like, it was so incredible. And you're sitting there going like, I don't even think people liked it.
And that night I'm like, I don't know if I'm going back day 2. And it was like, just go. And I go back and I meet a guy who works in distribution talking to Riley. So when I walk up, they're already talking because I came at lunch. It was a 2.5 hour drive from home. So I'm like, I'm not going to show up at 8 a.m. this time. I'll go at lunch. And I walk up, they're talking. I end up having a really good conversation with this guy. His name's Sparrow. But when he finds out I'm on a documentary, he's like, we don't distribute documentaries typically. He's like, I have some contacts that maybe would be able to help, but like documentaries generally aren't your like money makers. Action films are, you know, and I'm like, that's cool, you know. The day plays out and all of a sudden people are talking to me about the film, and it's like people were moved by it. I think they were like maybe shocked by it at the time. So it gets the awards part and they play the trailer after they announce like who won the award. And I win an award and I give an acceptance speech, and they had shown the trailer. And when I walk out, I get bombarded with people, and the distributor was one of them. And all of a sudden he's sharing with me that he like struggled with an eating disorder when he was young and he was bullied, and he's like a super fit guy. And he's like, I still have days where I binge eat, but like I go to the gym to work it back off. Cause I'm like, what? Like, you have abs, like you're muscular, you know? And the vulnerability, that's what this film does. God always uses it to open conversations. So it went from, we don't sign documentaries to here's a card. And we ended up, I talked to Sparrow after that. He sent our film around town. There were some interested parties, and We had conversations and we ended up signing with Stonecutter after all. If I didn't go back the second day, I don't meet him. And that's why it's not about the emotions and the pride. It's just about showing up and staying the course, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a good word.
It's been really cool, man. So they have us coming out September 9th. We are premiering on or releasing on Amazon Prime, iTunes / Apple TV, Google Play, Fandango, Sling TV, as well as like Dish Satellite, some Canadian networks. So it'll go into basically all these platforms. And then after 90 days, they'll be pitching HBO, Netflix, Showtime, and a whole list of people. It's been cool. Whereas like I'm passionate about film and your distributor, generally, it's like they're not looking at it like this is going to make such an impact. They're looking at it as like, okay, how do I protect you? How do I like get you a good rate on this? How do I make sure it's in a good spot on the new release section of Amazon? And like, you know, but all the puzzle pieces come together and it's not about me. It's about the God I serve. Are there dark nights? To this day? Even the press and like having to do interviews and whatnot. It's like, there's a piece of you that's like, I don't want to be out there like that. What if I get misquoted? What if people attack at me? But I think the piece of it is that God is showing me how to build something new and walk a new path. And that means at times it's uncomfortable and at times it's uncertain, but you got to just trust that God knows where he's going.
You're playing your role in the part of, whatever it is he's called you to do, which is,
another Chris Fick statement would be, I'm playing with house money.
What? You definitely are, man. Cause it's like, who saw this coming? Right. And even like a lot of our conversations was like, Brad, this is your first film, man. You got 2 more coming plus more. Like there's more stuff coming. It's like the first one's where you learn everything, you know, and stuff. And so I think that's part of it too. It's like, always the most stressful to do anything the first time. So point of action is September 9th. Mm-hmm. It's on those Amazon, like you said, Fandango, Sling.
I think Microsoft 365 is in there too, so but just Amazon Prime is the big hitter, and then Apple TV / iTunes.
So people can watch it there. Also, there's an opportunity I know you have for churches or where,
yes.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that?
Yes. So our distributor has told us this close to a digital release to continue screening the film, be it a film festival or otherwise, he doesn't want us doing that. So out of respect for that, without showing the entire film, is we're looking for churches. I'm hopeful that Steadfast is going to host one.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Yeah.
We're calling it The Church is a Healing Place with the filmmakers of The Threshing Floor. And it's me and it's Pastor Joe Fury and it's Tim. And we are showing 2 scenes from the film between 5 and 7 minutes each. One, this scene from the film is about the escalation of going places we never would have thought that we would go. And it breaks down a little bit of the psyche in our mind of how our survival mechanisms work, that we start to prioritize addiction and we get caught. And we're going to show that, and then we're going to have a discussion on kind of like what the cycle of addiction is and how it starts and how these symptoms take over. And then we're going to show a section of the film that details the end of Tim's testimony through Joe Fury's section in the film, talking about the church is a healing place and the renewal of our mind. How, you know, once we're relieved from the substance, we still need to learn how to walk this out. Otherwise, we're going to go back to it. And after we watch that, we're going to have a discussion about how can the church not enable addiction, have boundaries, but how can we reach people and love on them and be a healing place that they feel not disconnected from. I'm going to kind of MC it. Tim and Joe are going to do more of the talking because they're just, you know, this is their arena. And we just want to have a conversation about healing. And it's not just addiction sometimes. We're all recovering from something, you know? So it's about how these things can operate in our life and how God desires to heal us and practically walk out our faith. It's good to be in the Bible study and be in your word, but it's like very important how you apply that word to your life. And then take Q&A from the audience, and we'll linger around after too. So if someone didn't feel comfortable sharing something in front of an audience, but we want to see people healed and walking in freedom. So we're going to be doing some of that. If you want to support us, if you go to wiseoldcrowmedia.com, There's a Threshing Floor page. There's a Tell Me About Tomorrow page. My Instagram's connected to it, the Facebook, the YouTube. If you want to follow any of that stuff, it of course helps out. If you want to share the trailer with someone who maybe it could help them in their journey. The mailer, I try and announce things we're going to do as they come up. I'm not like a every week guy, but like when there's a milestone, I send out a mailer to people. But yeah, if you stay on the Instagram or the Facebook, it's like that's where things get shared. We just reshared the behind the scenes on this, the newest trailer. You can support us by just sharing it with someone and you know, maybe read some of the press coming out, because not just me, but Tim and Reed get to share a little bit of their heart behind what we did and why the faith is at the foundation. It matters the most because it's not just about separating from the substance. It's about healing. And we believe the only way to really heal is for God to do the healing. And we have to be open to that. And it can be uncomfortable, but working through the stuff that drives us to behaviors that aren't good for us is the only way to really get rid of bad behaviors, you know? Mm-hmm. Whether it's an anger issue or like whatever it is, an addiction, it's like there's something driving that behavior. And I think God wants to heal us of that so that we can be more productive and walk in freedom. And the only way to do that is to face it head on. Mm-hmm. And I believe God is faithful to show up and to bring healing to it when we're honest about it and we process it. Sometimes it means forgiving someone. Sometimes it means forgiving yourself. Sometimes it means like actually facing that something affected you that maybe you've been saying for a long time that didn't really affect me. A divorce, someone leaving, something someone said to you at school, an incident where you got bullied. Sometimes that stuff gets in there. And we don't realize that there's still repercussions of it. And it's like letting go of it and saying, I'm choosing to forgive it, not because I'm dropping the case, but it's God's case to try. It's not mine. God says judgment is his. He knows intent. He knows people's hearts. He knows things. So it's like, I'm not saying things that have happened to you in your life are right, but I'm saying if you hand them over to God to be the righteous judge over, it relieves you the burden of carrying that stuff around. Sometimes things happen to us that aren't our fault. And just like acknowledging it wasn't my fault that happened to me, it can be like really healing. Or sometimes you did something like the brothers in the Joseph story. Mm-hmm. That it's like, oh, there's only so much remorse that you can have before it's like, it's time to like forgive yourself and move on. Like you're not that person anymore, but don't go back to it, you know?
Yeah. I love the idea of confessing sins done to you, sins done by you, and sins done around you, where you you bring all of them to the Lord, whether you're the one that did it or not, but just bringing them all to him for healing. To be like, I confess that these things happened and I lay them down at your feet, all of it. So I'm no longer burdened and held by it, captive to it, basically. This has been a really good conversation.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man.
I think what's cool about it is we got to do it like basically on like the whole thing, not just like part of the story, but the whole story and all of what God's done. And even recounting it was just, man, it filled me up thinking about all of it and seeing what all he's done and what all he's going to do in the future. We don't know, and we don't know what part it is, but if he's in it, it's going to be worth it and it's going to be fruitful. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Well, everyone out there who listens, stay encouraged and walk out whatever God's called you to, and don't miss the people that God has put in front of you now, you know? So I hope you're encouraged by it. Thanks for tuning in for a longer episode, a special episode. And yeah, appreciate everyone out there. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Yep. See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Voyager Podcast. If you'd like to reach out, you can reach us through Instagram at the Voyager Podcast. We hope this has been encouraging for you. Until next time.